Good evening. Happy Wednesday and welcome. I'm so happy that you decided to join me this evening. And let's talk about just for a moment what is happening in the United States and around the world today. Well, let me give you a little insight. June 17th, 2020 is the 169th day of the year, and there are 197 days left in 2020. June 17th, 2020 is the 25th Wednesday of 2020 on the 25th week of 2020. It is the 90th day of spring, and there are 4 days left until summer. So, the birthstone for this day is Alexandrite, Pearl, and Moonstone. Today is also the World Day to combat desertification and drought. So, this is observed by the United Nations. And the day aims to raise awareness about the issue of desertification and how to prevent it. So it's the degradation of land, especially in the deserts and dry areas. The World Day to combat this happens every year on June 17th. And let's talk about some popular holidays around the world today. Today, in the United States and Canada, there's National Hockey League Awards. In Australia, it's Purple Bra Day. And it is the anniversary of the uprising of 1953 in East Germany. It's Iceland's Independence Day. And it is the occupation of the Republic of Latvia. And the last thing, it's the pass to immorality of General Don Martin Jimenez. And this is from Argentina. So now that I've given you a little bit about what today is all about, share one fun thing that you did last week in the chat. So while you're putting that in, I'll share with you what I did. So on Sunday, I made some homemade spaghetti sauce. So my dad and mom used to make it and canned it all the time years ago. I reaped the benefits, but I never made it myself. So I felt it was time to try it, as well as to cut down on the salt and the sugar in the processed sauce. I just want to share with you that it was a success. So today, I want to talk a little bit about emotional health and why social emotional learning is important now and in the future for children in trauma. Emotional health is important for all of us during COVID-19. I have seen so many articles on taking care of your mental and emotional health. There are so many people suffering from depression, loneliness, stress, and people are just having trouble sleeping. Research in adults 55 years and older has shown that feeling socially isolated is connected with the depressive symptoms and higher levels of psychological stress. So, what does this mean? It means not having social interactions make people feel sad. It makes people feel worried, um, and you're more prone to emotional highs and lows. And just the uncertainty of this crisis can cause depression. As we cope and take care of our own challenges with emotional health, we need to look at why social emotional learning is important now and for the future of children in trauma. So, the first thing I'd like to do tonight is take a brief moment to define social emotional, or as some people refer to it, social and emotional learning. The collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning, also known as CASEL, defines social emotional learning as the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals. They feel and show empathy for others, and they establish and maintain positive relationships and make responsible decisions. I'm going to talk about tonight 8 components or competencies of SEL. Now, I know that Castle only uses 5 for their core competencies, but for today's discussion, we're going to talk about the 8. So the first one is personal responsibility. So this is a person's likelihood to be careful and reliable in his or her own actions and when contributing to a group. The next, optimistic thinking. A person's attitude of confidence, helpfulness, and positive thinking about him or herself and his or her life in the past, in the present, and in the future. The next is goal-directed behavior. And so this is the ability to start and push through tasks. So some days, we can get up and get going and things just go wonderful. And some days I have to push through getting up to go exercise. It is really difficult. Okay. But this is a person's ability to start and push through. Social awareness. This is a person's ability to show respect for others' ideas and their behaviors, to recognize his or her impact on others, and to use cooperation and tolerance in social situations. Decision making. A person's approach to problem solving that involves learning from others and from his or her own previous experiences. Another is relationship skills. And this is a person's consistent performance of socially acceptable actions that allow for positive connections with others. And then there's self-awareness. A person's realistic understanding of his or her emotions, your strengths, and areas of growth, and consistent desire to improve. And last but not least is self-management. And this is a person's success in controlling his or her emotions and behaviors and to succeed in a new and challenging situation. And this is something we've all been doing during this crisis. And I want to call it a crisis because it is a crisis. Or we can call it a pandemic or COVID-19, but it is certainly a crisis in most of our lives. So we may not be able, we know that sometimes you're not able to provide that exact type of engagement as you were online, or some people are still online in the classroom. It's important to help students feel connected. Students need to feel connected, okay, and mimic the structure of the typical school day. And I know that is difficult. But researchers contend that factors such as grouping and the learning environment are important for developing self-efficacy, social awareness, growth mindset, and self-management. We all know that routines and relationships are important. So whether we're being taught in the traditional classroom setting or virtually, children in trauma can often suffer in silence because trauma is stored in the nonverbal part of the brain and it's not expressed verbally. It may not be talked out or easily identified. Social emotional learning assists children to cope in many different situations. It teaches children how to connect their actions, their thoughts, and their feelings. So, this happens when they begin to notice feelings and physical sensations in their body, such as heat. Oh, I feel embarrassed. Oh, I'm ashamed. Or pressure when they're feeling stressed. And we talked about stress, and they don't always say, I'm stressed, but maybe we maybe see some behaviors, or they may have some physical symptoms. Tingling or muscular tension, showing that they may be angry or nervous. And sometimes when they just feel overwhelmed, they may have a headache or a stomach ache. Children need to start understanding the physical sensations of their bodies and connecting them to their emotions. But who will teach them this? Once they know these things, then they can learn how to name it and how to describe the feelings, such as sadness, frustration, anger, loneliness. Social emotional learning teaches them how to safely express these feelings in a healthy way, verbally or non-verbally. And they can learn the coping strategies for managing those feelings. Social emotional learning can also serve as a tool to address child trauma, as research shows that explicit instruction and metacognition. And for those of you who are listening that are not in the education field, that is the awareness and understanding of one's thought process. And guided practice, that's when you're helping students put into practice what they've learned with interpersonal skills. And that's what you rely on when you interact and communicate with others, and with intrapersonal skills. And that's the foundation on which you build your relationships with others so that they can more easily navigate your interpersonal relationships. And these things can change how people learn and interact with others. So let's talk about the brain for a minute. As the brain develops, neural pathways are created. And these connections are shaped over time by experience. So there's increasing evidence that neuroplasticity is disrupted by stress. And this disruption is seen on both the structural and molecular levels. So stressful early experiences alter that neural functioning and connectivity within and between the areas of the brain that are responsible for coordinating thoughts and actions and regulating the stress response. Stress causes then the release of the neurotransmitter cortisol, and constant unresolved stress can cause what is known as cortisol cascade effect. So what does that mean? So too much cortisol can lead to mood and behavior issues and disruption in your memory and recall. So there was a study in 1998 that found a strong relationship between exposure to abuse or dysfunction and multiple health risk factors in life. So the more the child experiences trauma, the more the development of the child's brain is impacted. However, students can better respond to the effects of trauma by developing social emotional competencies. So, what does that mean? So, the brain's neuroplasticity makes it possible for repeated experiences to shape the brain, and then this can reverse the effects of chronic stress. And fortunately, research has repeatedly shown the positive effects of social emotional learning interventions. So, this is a win. These studies have also shown that social emotional learning can teach children how to cope with stress, manage anger, and avoid distractions. So, for example, teaching children to slow their breathing in stressful moments can work to control their responses and manage behavior. I want to share 3 ways that we can support social and emotional learning strategies during this pandemic that we are still in. So, one is creating that continuity. So, it's an important aspect of social emotional learning, especially for students experiencing trauma. The disruption in their current environment is challenging, it's overwhelming for them. And sometimes it can be even overwhelming for us. So I hope that students had that opportunity to connect with their peers so that they could keep in contact and communicate over the summer. Peer relationships are critical for social and emotional development. The second thing is inter and interpersonal skill development. A study in this area shows that how you connect with your own thoughts may matter more than how you connect with others. So, how you connect with your own thoughts may matter more than how you connect with others. Students need to reflect on their own thinking and just have an awareness of their own thought process. It would be great if they could journal daily to document this time in their lives and what they're actually thinking at this time. This is a time in history, and they may forget their feelings as they grow older. Self reflection for students and adults is imperative in this pandemic. So it's important for children to utilize those higher order thinking skills and synthesize their ideas and thoughts. And the third thing is building support for that entire family. Families are still going through this crisis situations. Families are in crisis. People are losing their jobs. There's just an overwhelming amount of people on just trying to get unemployment because they can't find employment. It is just they're having struggles, and families need help, and they're going to need help also in the future. So, engaging these families in a school wide approach to social emotional learning is instrumental in planning for the fall as well as supporting families in the future. Having conversations about how they're feeling about COVID-19 and their perceptions. Administrators can host a virtual meeting around the social, emotional, and mental health of families in the school. This is another way to share these resources with families. So you're saying, well, how do we talk to parents about social emotional learning? Well, a recent study indicates that parents prefer the term life skills over the term social emotional learning. Why? Because they understand the term better and they're just more familiar with it. So remember that some of them, just like me, when I was in school, we never heard the word social emotional learning. So perhaps just using the terminology that they're familiar with will help them to understand how to incorporate that in their homes. This study also told us that 78% of parents believe that life skills are equally as important as academic development. So it also was suggested by the research that many parents claim ownership over their child's social emotional development, but they also expect that the schools to support that development also. So, how do we bridge that gap in terminology and make parents feel more comfortable in this arena? So, the first thing we can do is introduce the terms, introducing the important terms that are familiar, like resiliency, empathy, self regulation, gratitude, active listening, and growth mindset. This is a great opportunity for teaching and also helping them be self aware to increase their buy in. The second thing we can do is just meet the parents where they are. You must take into consideration cultural influences, life experiences of students and the families. So, social emotional learning may also require them to confront some of their own biases. And the third thing is that we have to be ready for those difficult conversations. Remember that this may be difficult for parents of students experiencing trauma. So I'm asking that if you'd be empathetic, express concerns with sensitivity when sharing strategies to improve the student's development. Utilizing examples is imperative, helping the students understand the concerns. And the fourth thing and the final thing is to involve students. Have students share their progress and how they're feeling about what they're doing in school. Have them practice sharing the concepts with their parents at home. Involving parents will form this deeper connection within your schools and in the greater community. So while we know that not all children will experience trauma, they will all face challenges at some points in their life. So all can benefit from learning skills for managing adversity. A trauma sensitive environment that supports children needs to feel safe and supported. This, paired with adult social emotional competencies and socially more emotional learning supports for students, will help ensure that the kids will cultivate healthy student behaviors and have opportunities to thrive in the face of hardships and difficulties in life. And we know that they've had them. So let's just change our gear a little bit this evening. Helping the traumatized child course is now on MemberVault. You can take it at your own pace. This course will give you strategies to implement in order to help the children experiencing trauma in your class or your daycare center or wherever you serve children. It also gives you that practical techniques that you need to be a trauma-informed parent, teacher, administrator, or again, whatever role you serve children. I've spent nearly 40 years in education, and I learned about and experienced the traumatized children. And this is why I have compiled my own unique foundational 7-step system of support for children in trauma. So be ready to meet your children with increased knowledge and skills. I'm offering this course so that you can be more effective for the children in trauma. I know that we can make a difference in the lives of the children that we are serving. So for the next week, when you put in the discount code 5OFF, FIVEOFF, one word, all caps, you will receive $5 off the price. There is a 100% money back guarantee within 7 days. I will again put the link in the comment section in our Facebook group. Please have a great week, and I will see you next week, same time, same station. Goodbye.